Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a good time. And for those of you seeing me for the first time, this is Roja. And if you subscribe my channel, you can see all the videos which I have done and released, especially nursing research and psychiatric nursing so far. So for today, I would like to discuss about sampling, which is very important topic in exam point of view, and we are going to just have a look at different types of questions which are asked by the NTR University. And next we are going to see what is sampling and what are different methods of sampling, which sample is selected for which type of research design, etc., and all those things. So coming to exam point of view, Dr. NTR UHS has asked different questions in different years, like define sampling, types of sampling techniques with suitable examples is a 10 marks question. 2019 it is asked, and in that same year define sampling bias. So I'm going to make another video on sampling bias and sampling errors, which will be released simultaneously along with this video as well. Next, another important question which was asked, like define sampling, but the types of probability sampling techniques with suitable examples is asked to explain here. Then in 2000 again, convenient sampling for 2 marks question. Probability sampling is asked almost 2022, 2020 and 2015. It's a 5 marks question, advantages and disadvantages of sampling in 2019 for 5 marks. Again, enumerate types of sampling, how many types of sampling, just listing down. It's a 2 marks question. Errors in sampling, so this is asked in 2020. And disadvantages of random sampling, it's a very important topic. I hope you are all prepared to listen to this one. What is meant by sampling? It is a process of selecting representative units from entire population. So whenever a researcher wants to conduct a study, he selects a population which is like adults or middle age or adolescents or nurses or so and so. A particular population will be selected, and from that population we select a sample, or they, which is also said as a subset of population, or they represent units or participants or subjects. We use different terminologies. So sampling is a method of selecting those participants or representative units or the subjects from the entire population of the study. So in sampling, as we move forward, we will just come across these terminologies, like what is meant by population. So already I have explained target population under study, a particular group of people who are under the study, whom we wish to study, like age, depending upon the age or disease condition or whatever the researcher is interested in, we select the population on that. Then we have a sampling frame, part of the accessible target population. So population is like where the study can be generalized, study findings can be generalized to the population. But sampling frame, it includes, like, maybe for example you want to conduct a study on postgraduate nurses, that is study is related to postgraduate nurses, they come under as a population. But when we say accessible target population, it is a frame where in a particular setting, particular area, particular state. So sampling frame includes part of accessible target population. Next, coming to sample, actual units who gets involved in the study, we call them as participants or subjects also. So anyway, we will define it, and already I have just explained. Population, it is an aggregate of all the units in which the researcher is interested. Problems faced by the postgraduate nurses. target population. It is an aggregate of all the cases with certain phenomena about which the researcher would like to make generalization. So the researcher would like to make a generalization of his findings on the postgraduate nurses who are facing some problems. So here target population, especially a setting is included here, like postgraduate nurses in Mohali. Next, accessible population. So there might be so many postgraduate nurses in Mohali, but they are the aggregate of cases that fulfill certain criteria and those subjects which are accessible, where the researcher can approach and get them involved in the study. So accessible population meant that. Next, coming to sampling frame, I have said like list of all the subjects in the population from which the sample is drawn. We call it as what? Sampling frame. So from the above definition we said like part of the accessible target population. So when we say accessible, those who get involved in the study are said as accessible, which are present and whose data is gathered for analysis or sent for analysis. Okay, so for example, census. Now sampling, it is a process, as we have defined earlier, of selecting a portion of the population, and this portion of population selected will represent the entire population whom the researcher actually wants to generalize his findings. Next, a sample is a subset of population selected to participate in the research study. These are the terminologies which we come across in sampling. Now coming to the purpose of sampling. Now we want to conduct a study and we cannot conduct study on everyone, isn't it? So it mainly affects the manpower, time, and the research findings, as well as over representation also will provide a sampling error as well as sampling bias. So economical, saves time, energy and resources. Next one is improved quality of data. Less people, more quality of handling people. If it is underrepresented, again we have sampling bias and sampling error. If it is overrepresented, we have sampling bias and sampling error occurring. So improved quality of data can be from less people, and we can handle people or the subjects, provide quality research results, but it should not be underrepresented as well. Coming to quick result study, yeah. Next, precision and accuracy of data. So interpretation of data is easier when you select a certain subjects, like certain amount of sample where we can represent. Coming to characteristics of good sample, representativeness. The sample should represent the population on whom we want to study, free from bias and errors. I said over representation or under representation. Then no substitution and incompleteness of the study what we are doing. Suppose when we are conducting a study, maybe participants will take part in the study and try to leave in middle of the study. That causes a problem for us to give the data for analysis and generalize the result. And if it is done not completed also, still errors will occur. Appropriate sample size, I said over representation or under representation will lead to sampling errors and we cannot generalize. It leads to no logical conclusion. So we have to be careful in these aspects when we are selecting the sample. Coming to sampling process, it involves 7 steps. What are they? Like identify and define the target population. First you define the population. Then on whom you want to study, you should have a clarity. Then describe the accessible population. A population where the researcher will be able to access or get in reach with. Ensure the sampling frame, whom all you are going to involve in the study. Specify the sampling unit via inclusion and exclusion criteria. Specify sample selection methods. Determine the sample size. We have a formula for estimating the sample size. I'll make another video regarding that. Specify the sampling plan and selecting a desirable sample. So we will just go through different types of sampling methods, and before we could proceed, we have some factors which influence the sampling process. Nature of the researcher. Inexperienced researcher or investigator. Lack of interest, lack of honesty in the researcher. Intensive workload, inadequate supervision. All these will affect the sample selection process. Next, coming to nature of sample. Inappropriate sampling technique, inadequate sample size, defective sampling frame, where the sample which is going to represent in the study, there is a lot of variations in their characteristics and lot of deviations in the samples which we are going to take, then that we call it as defective sampling frame. And underrepresentation, we call it as inadequate sample size. Inappropriate sampling technique. We have different types of sampling methods, so that we'll discuss further. Then circumstances, lack of time, large geographic area, lack of cooperation from the participants, natural calamities which are like unexpected occurrences which cause some disruption in continuity of the study. Next, coming to different types of sampling techniques. We have two types of sampling techniques. One is probability sampling technique and the next one is non-probability sampling techniques. Under probability sampling techniques, this is the one which is asked most of the times for 5 marks question. Simple random sampling. This is asked for 2 marks question as well. Stratified random sampling, systematic random sampling, cluster or multi-stage sampling technique, sequential sampling technique. These are coming under probability sampling techniques. Next, coming to non-probability sampling techniques, we have convenient sampling technique, purposive, volunteer, consecutive, and quota sampling and snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is asked as a 5 marks question and also 2 marks question. So we'll just quickly go through these different types of sampling techniques. First one, probability sampling techniques. It is based on the theory of probability. That means most of the studies, like quantitative studies, are done using this probability sampling techniques. Experimental studies, it involves random selection of members from the population. We say like true experimental research design. Sometimes quasi-experimental research design, it lacks one of the characteristics we said, either randomization or manipulation. So every subject in the population has equal chance of being selected as a study sample. That is randomization. So regarding this randomization, we have seen this in true experimental research design, which has this manipulation, control and randomization. So under this first one, we have simple random sampling. So when we say simple random sampling, it is like every member has an equal opportunity of getting involved in the study. Population here should be homogeneous to use this technique, and methods used are lottery method. I think during while I was explaining about that randomization, I have explained like lottery method can be used. Suppose so there are 100 students which like in a class, and we want a sample 25 sample from them for involving them in a study, like my like maybe if you are doing some research on nursing students regarding stress and anxiety levels or something, and we want to take only 25 sample and there are 100 students, we make chits of 100 slips and just put it in a jar and ask, just randomly take a slip, and which whosoever roll number comes, they are involved in the study, and we just end it by 25. So by lottery method, and a table of random numbers, use of computers. By using computers, we can just take a random numbers from that system. Advantages: most reliable, free from sampling bias. Disadvantage: incomplete sampling frame can cause occur, expensive and time consuming as well. So when you're sampling frame, you should be very careful when you're using this method. Whom and no, none of them should be excluded, and or whoever, how many are present during that time of selecting this sampling technique. A lottery, we say 100, but some are not present and their numbers might be missed. Inadequate sampling frame. So this is about random sampling method. So we say every person has equal chance of being selected as a subject, and the population should be homogeneous, and some of the methods are like lottery and table of random method numbers by using the computers. Next, coming to stratified random sampling. So here we say strata. Strata means, for example, like this is the earth. If you just see, we have different layers of the earth, stratosphere or different layers. Like when we just look at the geographical aspects of the earth, different layers are there. The same way, when we say strata, they are divided. For example, if you want to conduct a study on prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder among patients or a survived ones after being affected with COVID-19, and you want to do it on both the genders, like we have male and female. So from male and female, we need to take the equal sample. Sample should be divided equally among male and female. In the same way, strata means it comes like you can divide according to the gender, age, then occupational status, educational status. So you need to take from that. Here it is defined as heterogeneous population is organized in homogeneous groups on the basis. Then random selection from each stratum is done. Okay, for example, I will tell you another example. Maybe you want to conduct a study on stress and anxiety among nurses working in different hospitals. Maybe if you take like A, B, C, hospital 1 is considered as A, and next hospital is B, and next hospital is C. And in A, if there are only 500 nurses here, and in B, if there are 1000 nurses here, and in C, hospital C, there are 2000 nurses here. And suppose what happens if you are taking 20 from hospital A, that is 500 nurses, and from hospital B, how many you should take if you want to have an equal ratio of it? It should be definitely 40 nurses from this hospital, and if you're taking 40 from here, then you have to take 80. Then you have taken equal proportion of nurses from all three hospitals. That is how it is. So 20 is to 40 is to 1, so it will be like 1 is to 1 is to 1, 1 is to 2 is to 4, because the nurses are not equal. But you are making them homogeneous here. Heterogeneous population is organized in homogeneous groups or strata on the basis of age, gender, occupation, socio-economic status, etc., etc. You're making them homogeneous. You're taking the ratio of nurses in equal format to conduct a study. That's how it is. Random, stratified random sampling. Advantages: ensures representativeness. Sample is heterogeneous population, but at the same time you make it as a homogeneous groups. Then disadvantages: time consuming, expensive, large population is required, chances of faulty classification of strata. If you are not calculating exactly how many should be involved to make it as a homogeneous group, then faulty classification of strata will occur. That's how it is. Next, coming to systematic random sampling. So when we say systematic random sampling, every third member or every fifth member, it is like that. So from the sample, maybe from the sample you select, you start with, you can select this with lottery and just take it from every starting number, nth number, you just skip 2 and take the next one, skip 2 and take, skip 2 and take every third member. If it is fifth, then you skip 4 and take. So k is equals to n by n. N is equals to total number of the target population and n is equals to sample size. So for example, total number of the target population, example, n is equals to 300 and n is 100. Therefore, every third number. By selecting the every third person in the population, you can select. Advantages: convenient and simple distribution of sample over entire population sometimes may result in biased sample. Because I said like if a researcher wants to conduct a study, like every 10th student who is coming to a library, and that means some of the characteristics or the height and appearance, personality traits are missed, so bias can occur if we just take this systematic random sampling. I hope you understood this one. A particular odd number, every third number or fifth number, according to the population, by using this formula, we can select which will be the starting one and how many to be skipped. Next, coming to cluster or multi-stage sampling. When we say cluster or multi-stage sampling, here the population is divided into cluster and whole cluster is involved in the study. That's how it is. Randomly the clusters are selected. So here when we say like in this you can use it as two stages. Like first stage, all members in the clusters are involved in the study, and second stage, maybe members from the clusters are randomly selected. So when we say clusters, population is divided into clusters, groups. For example, this can be used like multi-stage sampling. Maybe you want to conduct a study in a particular or India, you want to conduct a study in India regarding some aspect. Then if you want to conduct a study in India, then you have to see how many states it's contain. If you want to be free from bias, how many states it contain, you should see that the sample is gathered in a random manner. From each state you have to see for the regions, then select the regions, then randomly you can select the regions, then you can conduct the study. So it consists of multi-staging. From the country, then select the state, then from each state select the district. While you're selecting the district, then you can use this random sampling methods. Then from selecting the district, from district where you want to conduct the study, exact location. So it includes multi-stage sampling. Advantages: quick and easy for a larger population. Disadvantage: possibility of high sampling errors. If you are not being systematic, and if you don't know, then sampling bias can occur, underrepresentation can take place, or some areas over representation can take place. Next, coming to sequential sampling. So random access is one and sequential access is one. Sample size is not fixed. What happens is, researcher will start with a small sample and tries to make some inference, getting results. Suppose if the results are not proper and not clear, where we cannot generalize the findings, then he will try to add some more samples and try to then again analyze, do some analysis till he is satisfied that he can generalize the findings of the study. The researcher will continue to add the samples or the subjects into the study. So sample size is not fixed here. Researcher initially selects small sample, tries to make inference. If unable to draw results, what will happen? New subjects are added till clear inference can be drawn. Advantage: study on small sample, possible sample is done. Okay, you can use it. Requires a repeated entry in the field to collect the sample. These are all some of the probability sampling techniques. Now coming to non-probability sampling techniques. So in this method, not all population has the equal chance of getting involved in the study as subjects. Whereas in probability, we said every sample or every subject has equal chance of getting involved in the study. But whereas in non-probability, this does not happen. Why? Because convenient sampling technique. Whatever is convenient for the researcher, whoever is accessible at that time, the researcher will try to conduct study on them. So this is accidental, also known as accidental sampling. Selection of most conveniently available people as subjects. So most commonly used in pilot studies. Before going for actual real study, we try to conduct pilot studies on a smaller group to just know how the study would proceed, go on, and what the results are, whether we are going in a proper line or not, right path or not. So convenient sampling can be used for that. For example, if suppose if consumers, if the person wants to, if a company wants to know about consumers' opinions related to certain product, they might just randomly go on to the area where they're selling their products, and just whoever is accessible, they can just approach the customer and try to ask few questions regarding the product, what they're taking, and just note down. It is like that. You randomly go on to the streets and ask persons regarding what is your opinion regarding the present government. They'll just say it off, isn't it? Convenient sampling. Advantages: easy, less time consuming and economic. Disadvantages: chances of sampling bias, and same may not be the representative of entire population. Next, coming to purposive sampling. When we say purposive sampling, this is also known as judgmental or authoritative sampling. So the samples are chosen by the researcher, just keeping his purpose in his mind, specific purpose. He decides, like, I need to do this study and I require this population or these subjects, so I'll approach only them. That's how it is. Purposive sampling technique. Usually study population is limited. Example, post-disaster victims. And advantages of this is simple to draw sample, useful in exploratory studies, saves resources and need less field work. Disadvantages, needs adequate knowledge about population under the study before approaching the sample or the subject. The researcher needs to have a proper understanding about the population, how they will be, like where they will be, where he can get an access to that population. All these needs to be known before, a prior ahead, before you could approach the sample. The sample selected may not be reliable sometimes. Next, coming to volunteer sampling. In volunteer sampling, here the participants comes willingly to participate in the study. A researcher will publish an advertisement or inform the target population, so and so study is going to be conducted. After coming to this country, I have seen like this ads. If you are over 50 years and suffering with arthritis, if you are interested in study, we are trying to conduct a study regarding some medications where they can do some trials on people, whether to check the efficacy of the medicine which has been recently found. So maybe the population who sees that advertisement and those who are having arthritis and really want to try with that new medication will go and approach that company and say that I am interested. That's how it is. Participants volunteer to participate in the study. Advantages: cost effective, less time, energy is required, large data can be collected in a limited period of time. But what is the disadvantage? Sample may not be representative sample and it lacks generalizability. Maybe because of over representativeness, sampling error can occur and sampling bias can occur. Next, consecutive sampling technique. So this is also known as total enumerative sampling. It includes all the subjects that meet the inclusion criteria, like for example, post-kidney transplant patients. So here consecutive, one after the other, the researcher will try to conduct the study. So he may conduct the study on one post-kidney transplant patient, then after conducting a research, consequently he will follow with the other person. So researcher conducts the research one after the other until a conclusive result is reached, thus the prefix conclusive. Advantages: less energy, money, time is needed. It ensures more representativeness of selected sample. Yes, because the target population and the sample or the subject is selected one at a time and fully focused. Disadvantage: no set plans about the sample size, because sample frame, how many will be available, the researcher will not be aware of, and whom he will be approaching, he is not aware of before, and sampling schedule he is not aware. So there is no guarantee that representative sample will be selected. Next, coming to quota sampling. When we say quota sampling, it's like adult, if we are conducting a study on a population which is consisting of males, females and children. So here the researcher has in his mind, I will take 10 of males or 9 of females or 7 of children, etc., etc. So they allot certain quota for the subjects to get involved in the study or different groups. So the population is divided into different groups or classes according to gender, education level, race, religion, socio-economic, occupational, etc., etc. Based upon that, they are allocated certain amount of quota and the subjects are involved in it. Percentage of groups in total population is fixed. So when I say this, maybe you might remember like stratified random sampling, somewhat like that. But there the selection is random. But here it is not like that. Advantages: chances of reliability and generalizability are high, suitable for studies where fieldwork has been carried out, like public opinion polls. Disadvantages: missing quota. Sometimes when we allot a quota for certain age or gender, maybe there might be some participants who will be missing that study, or sometimes over representation in other quota. So bias, chances of bias is possible. Then the next one is snowball sampling. This is very important. When we say snowball sampling, how like in areas where there is a snow, where the snowball starts rolling from the mountains and it tries to hit the small one somewhere like that. As it rolls, it tries to hit and hit touch the other ones. In the same way, where is to identify the sample when it is very difficult, what we try to do is first, for example, if you take, if researcher wants to do some study on a drug abusers or persons who are addicted with some drugs, or alcoholic addicts or something, so it's difficult to find where are the other ones. So he will start with the one person, and this person can lead to the next two persons. The researchers approaches this person, and this person can tell the route to approach the other three person. So it just rolls, it's a chaining system. One person guides to two persons, and two person guides to three persons, and each person will guide to another three persons. So this is how snowball sampling occurs till the researcher gets the sample which he had set for himself to conduct the study. This sampling goes on. So it is a chain referral sampling. This is a technique used to locate the subjects where it is hard to locate. For example, drug addicts. Types of snowball sampling: in a manner of fashion, like linear sampling, we have exponential non-discriminative sampling and exponential discriminating sampling. Examples of this: simple and cost-effective process to locate difficult sample. It is simple and cost-effective. Disadvantages: less control over sampling methods. Sample representation is not guaranteed. Sampling bias is a big concern here, because we are not certain and sure whether we'll get the sample or not, and how long it takes, and if our sample is possessing the criteria which we have set for our study or not, that is also not guaranteed. Thereby chances of sampling bias and sampling errors occurring, and the findings cannot be generalized to the whole population at times. So these are all different types of sampling techniques, and some of the problems of sampling are sampling errors, which I'll discuss in my next video. Lack of sample representativeness. Of course, we see like each individual is different, and each individual varies in their traits, behaviors, attitudes, opinions, etc., etc. But to the maximum, researcher should see that the sample represents the whole population. And sometimes if we really do not select the appropriate technique, sampling technique, it lacks the sample representativeness, and as a result difficulty in estimation of sample size. There is a formula for selecting the sample size. How much sample size needs to be, I'll discuss in my next video as well. So if you should be aware of how much sample to select according to the population. Lack of knowledge about sampling process, lack of resources, cooperation, lack of existing appropriate sampling frame, then careless approach of researcher towards sampling process. These are all mainly related to the sampling errors. So this is all about sampling methods, and I hope you all had an understanding of what are different types of sampling methods, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. And I told probability sampling methods are very important. And the next one is like snowball sampling, which is asked, they have asked sampling bias and sampling errors, and with suitable examples also completely they have asked. So thank you all very much for listening. We'll meet soon. Have a good day. Thank you all once again. Please don't forget to share and subscribe my channel. Bye.